Hello and welcome to the channel. I will tell you interesting scary stories from Reddit and not only. Do not forget to support the author of the story. I will leave his credits in the description. I also hope for your support of my channel in the form of likes and comments. I really appreciate it. Get comfortable in your bed, put on your headphones, and turn off the lights. It's going to be a night of nightmares. We're starting. I guess you can say I was unlucky and was dealt an awful hand in life. When I was younger, I lost my father to a car accident. He was coming home from a long shift one night. An asshole decided that it would be a good idea to drink and drive going over the recommended limit, and I'm sure you can put two and two together. It completely devastated my mother. Not only did she lose the love of her life, but she was also struggling financially with a child to take care of. We couldn't afford to get him a proper burial, and it broke my mother that she had to deal with going through this by herself. My mother didn't have any family that she talked to. If I could remember correctly, it was only ever my father, my mother, and myself. No aunts, no uncles, hell, not even any grandparents. My mother cried many nights as she could barely provide for us. She made many sacrifices to make sure I had somewhat decent clothes on my back. As the years passed, my mother had worked long hours on many jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. I even picked up some part-time jobs to help out with the bills against my mother's wishes. Even with us picking up extra jobs, it wasn't enough to keep our house. We had to move in a shitty apartment complex on the worst part of town. I even offered to drop out of school to pick up more jobs to help out with rent. My mother never agreed with the idea. Carmen, your best gift in this world is your intelligence. Don't throw away your gift just for me, she would always tell me. It kinda became her own quote. She never liked the thought of me working the jobs at all. She always wanted me to focus on school, but I couldn't. It never felt right making her go through so much while I sat back. Unfortunately, my mother fell extremely ill. All those years she overworked herself took its toll on her health, and it eventually caught up to her. I tried everything in my power to help pay for her medical bills. I picked up more side jobs, damn near working myself to exhaustion. But no matter how hard I worked or how many jobs I picked up, it was nowhere close to paying the fees. But my mother unfortunately passed away. I was working a shift at a local gas station when I was given the news. I couldn't remember that night well. All I could remember was me bawling my eyes out all night. I was devastated. I didn't even get to tell my mom goodbye. I was alone. No one to look out for me but myself. I never got to say goodbye to the person who overworked themselves just to provide for me. It was hard for me to adjust after that. It felt like I lost a part of me along with my mother. But I had to continue working my jobs for crappy pay. A barely 18-year-old girl working multiple jobs for shitty pay just to keep a shitty apartment. I would be lying if I didn't say I lost all motivation for living. I would be lying if I said I had faith in myself. Faith never existed in the real world. But I managed this far, so I guess that stands for something. Crappy pay wasn't my only issue. The landlord always had something against me and my mother. She purposely tried raising the rent multiple times since we moved in. She knew we had it rough, but she didn't care. In her words, trash like us didn't deserve to live in her precious apartments. While I was coming back from an exhausting day of working jobs, she was standing in front of my apartment door with her arms folded. She wasn't pleased. Her face twisted into a small frown. Her partially gray hair braided into a dingy ponytail. "Rent's due today, Ms. Harris," she said, while tapping her foot against the floor, waiting for me to answer. She always had a negative aura that centered around her. I always sensed she was sent by the devil himself to torment me farther. But I paid you the money last week, I responded. I felt my heart start beating a bit faster. I felt as if this was another attempt to get me kicked out again. You can never be too sure with her at this point. Do not lie to me, Ms. Harris. You never paid me the money for rent. I don't like being lied to. Her frown then turned into a small grin. She knew I wouldn't be able to give her more money than what I already gave her. Please, Miss Yolanda, don't do this. I'll pay you double the rent. I'll find a way, please, I pleaded. She looked at me with her cold, dead blue eyes, her grin growing more sinister, as if she liked hearing me plead and beg her. How are you supposed to pay me double the rent if you can't even afford to bury your mother? She finally responded, while her grin only got bigger. I felt my lips quiver as the tears started rolling down my cheek. I felt like a small child compared to her. I felt shattered and destroyed by her comment. How could a person say something like that, unprovoked? I stood there and sobbed. I was going to get kicked out of the only place I had to call home now, and there was nothing I could do. I was completely at her mercy. It was established she had none. I could feel her heartless stare gaze upon me as I continued to sob. I could even hear her giggle slightly. She was enjoying this. She enjoyed seeing me suffer. Well then, Ms. Harris, it hasn't been fun having you in my apartment at all, so I would... Before she could finish her sentence, the sound of a door swinging open caught her attention. An older gentleman with slightly gray hair and a pair of old blue overalls stepped out of his apartment. Now you leave that poor girl alone. You want rent? Here, take this, he said, while pulling out cash from out his wallet. He shoved a couple of crumbled up $100 bills into Miss Yolanda's arms. Her grin slowly faded away as a look of annoyance took its place. This isn't your business, Terrence. This girl can barely pay rent. She's a nuisance and deserves to be kicked out, she mumbled as she stared daggers at me. I couldn't find the strength to form any words to defend myself. I barely found the strength to fight the urge to break down again. Just take the damn money and crawl back to whatever hole you came from, he stated, as he gave her a look of disgust. Ms. Yolanda slowly started counting the crumbled up hundreds. She left out a groan as she pocketed the money. You got lucky this time, but he won't be able to bail you out next time, Ms. Yolanda growled, before walking down the hallway. I felt myself able to think clearly again, as her negative aura was gone again. But I couldn't help but to continue to sob. Are you alright, kid? He asked. His voice was sympathetic as he knelt down beside me. I caught a small glimpse of his face before I looked away in shame. His face had a sympathetic expression on his face. I'm all right. You didn't have to do that for me, I muttered, as I began wiping my tears away from my eyes. He paused for a moment before responding. You didn't deserve to go through that. I know you're a hard worker, and it's hard to meet ends meet. I was once in your shoes when I was younger, he said, while reaching his hand out toward me. His voice was soft and sympathetic. I try my best, but no matter how hard I try, I can't find a stable job that would hire me. So, I work different low-wage side jobs that barely pays, I said, while sniffing. I felt the tears flooding my eyes again. I reached out for his hand, and he helped me to my feet. I'm Terrence. It's nice to meet you, he said, while waiting for me to respond. See, Carmen. And thank you again, Mr. Terrence, for doing what you did for me, I mumbled, while wiping my eyes again before the tears could form. I really appreciate what you did for me, but I have to get ready for my night shift in an hour, I said. while I searched my purse for my apartment keys. Wait, it's almost 1:45. It's not safe for you to go out there, especially with all the women that's been going missing recently. His voice had a sense of worriness in it as he stared at me with a concerned look. I have to. I can't just not go to my shift, and plus I need the money. I can't afford to be kicked out, I said, while pulling my apartment keys out my purse and into the small keyhole. Wait, I could get you another job that pays you well. His expression was sincere. I turned around toward him and gave him a raised brow. I hope he wasn't implying what I think he was. No. I don't mean that kind of job, if that's what you were thinking. He nervously chuckled. My friends and I work as cleaners for a cleaning company, ran by a businessman named Michael Hendricks, and we can use another employee. He paused before continuing. But the pay is really good, so you won't have to worry about working multiple jobs, he added. His demeanor changed, like he wasn't telling me something. I caught on to his sudden change of movements, but I couldn't refuse it. This was a rare opportunity, and I needed it. I'm actually heading in to help out with some cleaning tomorrow around 7. If you want, I could take you with me, and you can start tomorrow. His demeanor switched back to sympathetic as he asked, waiting for my response. I felt myself tearing up again. Not only that he saved me from being kicked out, he helped me land a possible job. Thank you so much. I truly am grateful for your kindness. I tried not to tear up again, but this was a very emotional night for me. Don't worry about it. Just try and rest for the rest of the night. You'll need it. His voice was soft and sympathetic. I would be lying if I said that he didn't make me feel a bit better about life in itself. He stood outside his apartment door and watched over me, making sure I got in my room safely. Once I got inside my shitty, I plopped down onto my pull-out mattress and laid there in the dark. Alone in the dark, with only my thoughts to keep me company. Mr. Terrence's words stuck with me, even after our interaction was over. He wasn't lying. Younger women were going missing in our area. A girl around my age range went missing a couple days ago. I remembered seeing posters of her around the areas I worked. Her bright blonde hair and her ocean blue eyes were very noticeable. Her smile looked like it could brighten anyone's day who came in contact with her. I felt sorry for the families of the victims who went missing. God only knew what pain they are going through now. Having a family member go missing must be difficult to deal with. It's not like the police did anything to help find them. The media tried to get them to at least investigate, but nothing ever came of it. Local search parties were formed, but it was always the same results. Nothing. All the young women had a couple of things in common, but the main common similarity they shared was they were in the escort business, to put it lightly. I drifted in and out of sleep. I haven't tried fighting sleep. Morning came quick, as I was awakened by an alarm, the alarm on my phone, blaring a loud noise that was sure to wake me up from my slumber. I took my time getting ready. I always get an hour head start on anything, working a lot. Does that to you over time. The atmosphere was cold and uneasy. It was always cold, but this feeling of uneasiness was stronger, but I couldn't focus on it now. Once I got finished getting ready, I took a look around my apartment and sighed. Hopefully this could be my chance to change my life around. Exiting my apartment, Mr. Terrence was already standing in the hallway with his hands typing away at his phone. Once he looked up at me, he nearly dropped his phone, almost as if I caught him by surprise. He stood there nervously staring at me, before finally speaking up. "Glad I didn't have to knock to wake you up," he said, while nervously chuckling at himself to recover. "Yeah, I didn't want to keep you waiting for me, so I decided to wake up early," I responded. while looking him up and down, with a slightly raised brow. Well, we should get going now, shouldn't we? He asked, while motioning toward the exit. His voice sounded a little shaky, like he was trying desperately to find something. We exited the apartment building and walked toward the parking lot. Mr. Terrence pointed toward a beat-up 2004 Lincoln parked in the lot. The drive was long and, for the most part, quiet. Small talk was made every once in a while, but it was mainly his text notifications going off. If you don't mind me asking, he paused for a moment, breaking eye contact with the road, and quickly looked over at me. Do you have any other family members that could have took you in? His voice was filled with sympathy and remorse. I took a moment to respond, looking down at my hands as they fidgeted around in my lap. No, it was only me and my mother after I lost my father. Now it's just me, I responded, while looking out the car window. Fighting the urges to tear up, I continued watching the cars go past us. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked, but I want to say that you're a strong young lady that will one day be a great member of society, he said. His voice had a slight hint of confidence. The remainder of the drive was silence, but Mr. Terrence's phone kept beeping, but I just ignored it. We eventually got to the address, and what greeted us was a rundown warehouse, its yellow coating of paint nearly peeled completely off. Vines were growing on the sides of the building, while the grass and gravel were mixed up together. Two men stood beside a limo, having a conversation with one another. One of the men's eyes glanced at us, while Mr. Terrence parked the car. Once Mr. Terrence and I stepped out the car and made our way to the others, a young woman with brunette hair stepped out the limo and quickly made her way toward the other side, opening the car door. A man with blonde hair and a very expensive-looking suit stepped out. The two men who were talking immediately stopped and turned their attentions to the man in the suit. Listen and listen carefully. I need the insides of building clean. He stopped speaking as his attention was focused on me now. Who's the kid? He asked, while raising his brow in confusion, his gaze never leaving me. Mr. Terrence quickly spoke up in my defense. Mr. Hendricks, this is the girl I was telling you about. She was looking to work with us and make a little money to get on her feet, he said while stammering. Mr. Hendricks' confused look slowly turned to a grin before he leaned closer to Mr. Terrence, whispering in his ear. Mr. Terrence's face had a look of disappointment for a brief moment before Mr. Hendricks patted him on his back before stepping back into his limo. Get the inside cleaned up. And Terrence, get that issue resolved before I get back. Understand? He said, while waiting for his response. Mr. Terrence nodded his head slowly before taking a deep breath. The limo sped off, leaving a small cloud of dust behind in its place. Let me introduce you to the rest of the crew. Mr. Terrence motioned over toward the two men, now putting on equipment. Carmen, this is Sanjay and Luther, he explained, as both men extended their hands out for a shake. It's nice to meet you, Carmen, they both said in unison. It's nice to meet you both, I responded, accepting their handshakes. How long do you think until it happens again, Terrence? Sanjay asked, while shooting a look at Terrence. Hopefully not soon, Terrence said, while letting out another sigh of disbelief. Let's just hurry this up, so we won't have to resort to it, Luther spoke up, while tossing me a pair of gloves. Sorry, we didn't expect a girl to be working with us. The only spare suit we have is way too big for you. He spoke. His tone was apologetic and remorseful. It's just fine. As long as the job gets done, I don't mind getting dirty, I said, while slipping the latex gloves on my hands. We approached the entrance of the warehouse and took a step into the building. A foul smell immediately hit my nostrils like a ton of bricks, making me gag a bit. Almost like something died in here in the warehouse. I took a look around the dimly lit warehouse. The only main source of light was that of the sun. I felt the same uneasy feeling as I felt back in my apartment, but this time it was more intense. My body didn't feel right. My instincts were telling me something wasn't right. The smell only got worse as we stood in the warehouse, making my stomach turn in disgust. "Smells like something died in here," I said aloud, while making my way over the small pile of rotting wood. "Probably some small animal that got stuck in here and died," Sanjay replied quickly, his voice filled with some worry. While I continued walking, the smell got stronger in a certain direction, but before I could move toward the direction, Mr. Terrence grabbed my shoulder, stopping me in my tracks. "Don't go wandering around now. Me and the fellas are gonna grab some more equipment from the truck. Just stay put, for your safety," he said. His voice was commanding. As he awaited for my response, I hesitated for a moment. What does he mean, for my safety? But I nodded my head, assuring him I would follow his instructions. Once they exited the warehouse, I took a look around the big empty building. The old white paint nearly peeled off the walls, exposing the bricks. My nose burned with the unbearable foul smell plaguing my nose. I had to find the source of the smell. It was driving me crazy, and I couldn't take it anymore. Mindlessly walking around the warehouse, the smell only got stronger as I walked. My stomach continued turning and my heart pounding as my nose led me to a huge silver door. The smell was overwhelming strong. It smelt like death itself, if you can describe it like that. Without thinking, I slowly began reaching my trembling hand out toward the door handle to open the silver door. My mind wanted to run far away from here, but my body wanted to know what the source of the smell was. Gripping the door handle, I twisted the handle and pulled the door open with little strength I could muster. A mixture of feelings hit me. The smell was completely overwhelming my nostrils, and I felt my heart drop to my stomach. Behind the door was a room with human skulls across the floor. Some still had flesh on them, while others looked like they were destroyed. A skull in particular stood out to me the most, however. A good chunk of bright blonde hair still remained intact, and also, to my horror, one ocean blue eyeball remained in the eye socket. My knees felt weak, and they struggled to keep me up and from falling. This was what happened to all the missing women. Before I could process it any further, a firm hand covered my mouth, and I was pulled back by a strong force. I specifically said to stay put and not wander away this place. Mr. Terrence's voice roared with anger as Sanjay and Luther stepped in front of me with disgusted expressions on their faces. "She saw too much already. Might as well take care of that issue Mr. Hendricks wanted taken care of," Luther muttered as he swung the silver door back open. My eyes widened in horror as the tears began flowing down my face. It was clear that I was the issue their boss was referring to. He knew I would mostly likely stumble across the door. Mr. Terrence began forcing me into the room while Sanjay assisted him by picking up my legs, carrying me into the room. I tried to struggle, but I was no match against their strength. The smell only got worse as we went deeper into the room, so bones and skulls were all over the floor. Even the walls had blood splattered across the peeling paint. The tears continued to flow down my face as I tried to scream, but all that came out was muffled screams. "I tried to help you, but you couldn't follow one simple instruction, Carmen. All you had to do was listen," Mr. Terrence snapped, as his hand pressed against my mouth, harder to prevent my screams. We eventually stopped in front of a big black door Locks and knobs secured the door in place. The door had looked like it was through hell and back, but it remained standing tall. Luther began unlocking the locks on the heavy door in a quick motion, as he had a bothered expression on his face. "Sanjay, help me open the door before the fucker wakes up and tries to escape again," Luther said, while finally getting the final lock unlocked. Sanjay followed his orders and began helping him pry the door open. I tried pleading with Mr. Terrence, but all that came out was muffled pleads. "I'm sorry, kid. I really liked you, and I tried to help you out, but it's out of my control now," he said, while closing his eyes in disappointment. The heavy door was half open before I made a split-second decision. I bit down on Mr. Terrence's finger with all my might, causing him to drop me and let out a loud yell of anger and pain. I fell toward the ground, but I managed to recover and began running toward the silver door. As I ran, I heard something that shot fear throughout my body. A loud scream came from behind me, and what followed truly struck fear in my heart. A loud screech followed. I took a look behind me, and I nearly fell to my knees in fear. A large red creature emerged from the door, crushing Sanjay behind the heavy door. The creature now with Luther in its grasp. The creature's limbs were long and disoriented. Its body had razor-sharp teeth running across its body down to its large feet. The creature's hands were massive. Razor-sharp teeth ran across its arms. Its claws were razor-sharp, resembling the claws of a bear or another animal. It let another ear-splitting screech, its long, sharp, jagged teeth exposed. Luther tried to break from its grip, but it only pissed the damn thing off. Without a second thought, the creature plunged its jagged teeth into Luther's face. A disturbing sound of flesh being ripped filled the room. His blood splattered against the wall as it dropped his lifeless body. Mr. Terrence turned and began running toward my direction as the monster turned its focus toward us. As I looked on, Mr. Terrence ran as fast as he could. But with a blink of an eye, the creature had leapt on top of him. A loud scream came from Mr. Terrence as he attempted to get away from the creature. Using its sharp claws, it tore Mr. Terrence to ribbons, leaving a red mist and his mangled body. The monster then turned its sights onto me. Its bright red eyes burned a hole through my body as it slowly moved toward me. I mustered all of my strength and picked myself up, fleeing toward the silver door. I heard its screams as its thunderous footsteps trailed behind me. Reaching the door, pain shot out from my back, causing me to fall face first on the ground. I tried crawling away, but I felt a lot of pressure pressing down on me. I turned myself onto my back as the creature raised its sharp claw in the air. I raised my arms above my face as it began slashing at my arms. All I could feel was pain from each slash it took at me. In a moment of desperation, I frantically felt around the floor beside me as one of its claws slashed a part of my face. I felt something with a hard and rough texture and picked it up and threw it at the creature, causing it to stumble back, screaming in pain. Without hesitation, I picked myself back up despite the pain and started running toward the warehouse entrance. Tripping and stumbling over myself, I continued running. The creature let out another loud screech, but this one was a screech of frustration. I was about 25 feet away from the warehouse door as I heard fast footsteps approaching me. I took a quick glance behind, and what I saw almost made me fall out of fear. The creature was now running on all fours, with its jaw now unhinged, showing off rows of sharp teeth that I've ever saw. It was closing the distance between us. As it was getting ready to attack me again, I threw myself and bursted through the door, falling face first on the hard gravel. I took multiple deep breaths before I eventually passed out due to the pain. My eyes slowly opened. Slowly observing my surroundings, I saw the medical monitors beside my hospital bed. Before I could process any further, my room door swung open and I felt my heart skip a beat. Mr. Hendricks stepped in the room, closing the door behind him, he a briefcase in his hand. Taking his shades off, he smirked before finally breaking the silence. "Looks like you survived after all, unfortunately," he hissed as he tossed his shades to the side. "Look here, kid, how about we make a little deal?" he asked smirkingly as he placed the briefcase on the bed. "In this briefcase is over $500,000. This can all be yours. If you do me a small favor, what happened in that warehouse stays in that warehouse." He smirked, while pushing the briefcase closer to me. I kicked the briefcase off my bed, knocking it on the floor. I let out a small wince of pain as my body still felt terrible. "I don't need or do I want your damn blood money," I snarled at him. I wouldn't let him buy me out. His smile quickly turned into a frown as he reached down and grabbed the briefcase off the floor. "You're in no condition to make demands. You need this money. I'd be surprised if you could walk properly. Now, if you were smart, you'd take my offer," he said, in a cold and low tone. "Once I get out of this damn hospital, I'll make sure to go to the police, to get justice for..." Before I could finish my sentence, he cut me off. "The police?" He chuckled softly to himself before continuing. "I won't have to worry about those pigs. Money can buy everything, you know." His cold smile returned on his face as he placed the briefcase back on the bed. "And you'll get justice for those women? I find that funny, you'll get justice for mere pawns. You truly do amaze me." His tone now more sinister as he looked directly at me. I felt tears roll down my face. But they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of anger. The reason why the police never searched for the missing women was because Hendricks bought them. "Now, I have important matters to attend to. I think you should keep this. Remember, keep your damn mouth shut," he hissed as he let himself out of my hospital room. I couldn't do much but stare at that damn briefcase, tears flowing down my face. Even when they stopped, I still felt myself crying. I was eventually released from the hospital and made my way back to my apartment with the black briefcase in my hands. I'm writing this as I have no other way to spread this message, but I hope someone sees this. I want everyone to know the truth about Michael Hendricks. I want people to know he's the real monster. I wish that those women get their justice in some way, shape, or form. But I hope their souls can hopefully find peace somewhere. I pray that someone finds the briefcase and burns it down to ashes. It makes me sick just staring at it after knowing who it came from, a murderer. But all I could do is hope for the best outcome. As for myself, I think it's time I finally see my parents again.